Today we're going to learn about fact and opinion, and a lot of people think that this is not an important chapter, but when I teach this chapter to my students, I find that they don't know as much as they think they know, and sometimes it's hard for them to distinguish between fact and opinion. And in order to be good readers or critical readers, we need to be able to evaluate what the author is trying to tell us. And we need to be able to do this critically, and that means being able to determine the fact from opinion, how much of it is propaganda, and then if there are any errors in what they're trying to tell us. We need to be able to decide things based on what we believe and what we have observed, what we've evaluated, and based on how we've looked at it in from a critical kind of standpoint. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through a PowerPoint that I have created that kind of addresses each of these issues, and hopefully by the time that we have completed this, it will give you some insight on how this can help you become a better reader. So we have fact and opinion, as I said. Fact and opinion is where readers recognize the author's points, and then the authors, their responsibility is to give you supporting information. And this is not only important in reading, but in the real world, because we have people, we vote, we have advertisers who are giving us information, and we have to be able to evaluate that information to see if it's supported with solid evidence. So what we're going to do is we're going to use fact and opinion to help us become critical readers, critical thinkers. We're going to be able to separate fact from opinion. We're going to be able to detect propaganda, and we're going to be able to recognize the errors in their reasoning. Okay? So basically, when we're looking at critical reading, we want to be able to separate fact from opinion. Okay? I'm going to give you a couple of definitions to help you determine this. A fact is going to be information that can be proven to be true. You have to have physical evidence, whether it's written or spoken, whether it's witnessed, but you have to have concrete evidence in order to prove that it's true. So here are some facts. I'll see if you can determine what makes them true. Okay, the Quad Tower is the tallest building in this city. So in order to determine whether that's fact or opinion, all you would have to do is go and research the information. This is documented somewhere because building permits had to be taken out. So through inspection, this could be confirmed to be the tallest building. Okay, so we could find proof or evidence to find that this is factual evidence. Albert Einstein willed his violin to his grandson. We can check this in the historical records, or we can check with Einstein's estate. Sometimes I know a lot of my students usually say, well, how are we supposed to know if it's something history related? If it's history related, normally if it gives us a date, that's something else that we can check, but we can also check the historical books to make sure that it has been proven. Another example, on September the 11th, 2001, terrorists destroyed the New York World Trade Center, killing thousands. And again, this particular date, the majority of us are familiar with because it was witnessed, it was televised. You know, it went on for. You probably couldn't turn on the TV without seeing this when this happened. Also, we now recognize this date, and if you've been in school or if you've been on your job, sometimes they take a few moments of silence for this particular date. So if you have dates, if it's historical, or if it's something that can be measured or researched, it can be proven to be a fact. Now, opinion is just the opposite. Opinion is going to be belief. it's going to be judgment or conclusion. But the main thing is that it cannot be proven. It's something that's objective, usually left open. The thing that reminds me when I think of opinion, living in the South and in many other locations in the United States, there are old wives' tales. Now, old wives' tales usually come from our great-grandparents, and it's just kind of goes on throughout the generation. Now, many of those old wives' tales cannot be proven, but they're based on belief. They're based on experience, but it's not factual information because there is no proof in most of those things. Okay? Here are some examples of opinions. The Quad Tower is the ugliest building in the city. Now, this is using a value word. Ugly is what we call a value word. Now, to me, opinions, when you use any word that evokes emotion or that will evoke emotion from someone else, then that's going to be opinion, because we all have opinions, especially about beauty. They always say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So therefore, when you use those value words or value terms, then it's going to be an opinion. Another example is Einstein should have willed his violin to a museum. Who says he should have willed it? I mean, and not to his grandson. So this is definitely opinion. And the other thing that when I teach this class, if they tell you what you should do, what you could do, or what you need to do, that's usually going to be somebody's opinion. Okay? The next example, the attack on the World Trade Center was the worst act of terrorism in the history of mankind. Now, it was a terrible act of terrorism. Now, whether it was the worst, that's always debatable, because somebody could come up with another terrible act that has taken place in the United States, and they could say this is the worst. So again, worst, greatest, best, it's ugly, any of those type of value words makes it an opinion. Now, when you're reading, you have to read critically. You have to be able to be a critical reader to detect propaganda. If you don't know what propaganda is, just think about when people go and vote, or if there are pageants or different things like that. Here's an example, or let me give you the definition of propaganda first of all. Propaganda uses emotional appeal instead of presenting solid evidence to support a point. Have you ever heard that, whether it's being used in advertising, voting? Definitely, you probably hear it in the political realm a lot, okay? But advertisers, salesmen, they often lack the actual factual support, so what they do is try to appeal to our emotion, and they use the propaganda techniques. So part of being a critical reader is your ability to recognize and resist these propaganda techniques. And the way you do that is you read critically, you try to see where they lack the support, where they lack the evidence, and you have to make the decision for yourself, okay, after you do all those things. There are 6 common propaganda techniques, and I'll go through each one of these. You have the bandwagon, you have the testimonial, you have the transfer, you have the plain folks, you have the name calling, and you have the glittering generalities. Okay? Now, again, a lot of this is used with advertising, politics. Salespeople use these, to play on our emotions. So you have to be very careful. And the same thing when you're reading, you have to take the same critical thinking and try to see if they are actually supporting what they're stating. Okay? The bandwagon. I know you've heard this before. The thing I think about when I think of the bandwagon is when, being from Louisiana, I'm not a big football fan, but, you have the Cowboys and you have the Saints. Well, when the Saints won the Super Bowl, how many people do you know that jumped on that bandwagon because it was the popular thing to do? I know a lot of people. So the definition for a bandwagon, it's a technique that tells us to buy a product or support a certain issue because everybody else is doing it. So the big thing was, we want to support Louisiana. They're close to winning the Super Bowl, So everybody jumped on the bandwagon to become a Saints fan. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad, but to each his own. Okay. Another example would be a TV commercial may claim that more and more people are watching the evening news with a certain anchor person, and that's to get you tuned in. Okay. And some of us, we don't do any research. We just, whatever they tell us on TV, it's true. And we've got to start being more critical and learning how to, read these things and think for ourselves. Another example, a cell phone may show people in many different kinds of occupations using a certain cell phone. So no matter how expensive it is, they want to show every type of people, from the plain folks to the business people to the rich people, to say that everybody can afford it. And then the political, they usually run ads that feature people from all walks of life that are speaking in their support. I mean, they use the races, they use babies, they use, the working class, middle class. They use whatever they can use, or whatever type of person they can use to generate more support for their cause. Okay, and ads, they imply that if you don't jump on the bandwagon, then you're gonna miss out. You're gonna miss out on when the Saints win. You're not going to be part of it because you stuck with the Cowboys. So you have to be careful about jumping on the bandwagon when you don't have all the information. The next one is a testimonial. A testimonial is usually tells us to buy a product or support a certain issue because a celebrity is doing it. How many times have we seen celebrities, endorsing products, and people buy it because they think, well, if it worked for her, it'll work for me. Probably one of the biggest things right now is you have some of the movie stars. I know Jessica Simpson and can't think of the singer, but Jennifer Hudson. They're doing the weight loss thing. So they're using stars to try to, endorse their product to get us to say, if the stars can do it and they look that good, then maybe we can try it. So the whole thing is to kind of find somebody that we really like to influence us. Here's an example. Famous athletes appear spokesperson, persons for all sorts of products, from soft drinks to automobiles. They also do shoes. They do clothing. And you know what? The kids, because they see a famous athlete wearing them, or they see the famous athlete selling this product, then they think, just because of who that is, they want to support them, and they go out and get it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it does what that athlete or that spokesperson says it does, but because of who is selling the product or endorsing the product, we sometimes jump aboard. Movies and TV stars, they make commercials, just like I said. Jennifer Hudson and Jessica Simpson kind of fall in this category. But the thing that you have to remember is that they're getting paid to do this endorsement. They're not experts about the product. All they're doing is getting paid, and they say, we'll do it, and then you have to be able to determine if this is propaganda or not. The third one is transfer. In transfer, probably the most common type of propaganda is technique, the product, or the candidates. They try to associate themselves with something that people admire or love. For instance, politicians, they hold signs saying, vote for me, and they stand next to a really pretty girl, because that's going to draw in attention. That's going to get the men's attention. So they know that people love beautiful women, even if it were a man, or a woman. You've got a nice looking gentleman next to them, then you appeal to the women. So beautiful, sexy women. They might be wearing a flag. They might be wearing a bikini or something to promote that. And really, again, people just tend to look at what they like or what looks good to the eye, and they don't really pay attention to what's being done to them. The fourth one is plain folk. This is probably one of the bigger things that politicians use. Plain folk, this is a technique where people present themselves as ordinary or average people, hoping that they can identify with them and like them. So political candidates try to do this. They say they're just regular people just like we are, and they're fighting for the same thing that we're fighting with. They pose in photographs while wearing hard hats and working with people who are in the everyday, workforce, and they try to appeal to us this way. Presidents of companies, they appear in their own ad showing that they are family oriented or that their company is run by regular business people, because this does appeal to a lot of people to know that they're just like we are. So this is the propaganda that we call plain folk. Then you have name calling. This is when politics goes really bad, and this is the part of politics that I don't like, but sometimes it gets really bad. And this is not only on the national level, this is local level. I've seen a lot of it, and the sad thing is that people don't research for themselves, and they watch what they see on television or what they read, and they assume that all of this information is correct. So name calling is just what it sounds like. It's used emotionally. It's a load of language. It's negative comments that try to turn people against either that product, the candidate, or whatever movement is taking place at that time. An example is you have a political candidate who labels an opponent as being soft or wimpy because of their views or how they look at a certain situation. In a taste test, and we see these all the time, they say that consumers describe the other leading brand of spaghetti sauce. It may be too salty or too thin, it's watery, or it's tasteless. So we see it both on the political end. We see advertisers doing it to each other. I know you've probably seen Coke and the Pepsi. They're always going against each other, along with many other products. So name calling is just when they try to turn people against either the rival product, a candidate is trying to turn you against its political opponent, or there's a movement that they want you to go against. Okay. The last form of propaganda is like glittering generalities. This is when it's important sounding, but no specific claim about it, about the product or the cause. And what I mean by this is an ad calls a certain television set simply the best. So there's no claim that says it's the best. They are making that claim. Okay? There's no evidence. There's no support. They're not comparing it or belittling any other one, but they're just saying theirs is the best. A campaign slogan claims that the person running for office is the right candidate for our city, and we see that all the time. But again, there's no specific evidence. It's just words that they use. The best. It's things that sound good that they can throw in about their product or their campaign slogan. So basically, to end this chapter, and I always try to end with a chapter review, but this is very basic. We talked about the author's point of view, helping you determine whether the support is solid or not. Being a critical reader, okay? Being a critical reader is very important. Sometimes we just go through the motions, and we're not trying to find out if what we're reading is supported with evidence. We need to be able to separate fact from opinion. Remember, we said a fact is something that can be proven, has to be with objective evidence. An opinion, on the other hand, is going to be belief, judgment, or conclusion, but it can't be proven. Remember, I said it kind of reminds me of the old wives' tale. It's been passed on from generation to generation, but there's really no objective proof that we can say for those different types of things. And then the last thing we talked about was detecting propaganda, because that's all part of fact and opinion. Advertisers, salesmen, and politicians use propaganda to try to sell either their product, get you to vote for them, or to buy the different things. And then we talked about the 6 types of propaganda: bandwagon, testimonial, transfer, plain folks, name calling, and glittering generalities. Okay, so fact and opinion, it may not seem important, but if you want to be a critical reader, you need to learn the difference between the two and make sure that when people are giving you information, that that information can be proven, that it is supported with facts that you can prove to be true.